Mark. Welcome.
Hi, Tony. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too. Welcome to Bridgewater.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And how are things with you?
Things are good. Since last we've chatted, I'm out of politics now and back to the church. So,
how do you feel now that you're in public life?
How do I feel that now that I'm out of public life? I feel a bit more relaxed. You know, I follow it with great interest still, and always will feel a commitment to trying to help the province. I believe Nova Scotia is a wonderful province, and you know, whatever I can do to help it, I'm going to do. However, that can happen in many different ways, through volunteering in community groups or in different ways. So just because I'm no longer working as a politician doesn't mean I can't help my province. So.
Have you had any regrets as far as Sunday shopping? Have you had any regrets?
Yeah, I do. Not that I ever was in a position really to stop Sunday shopping, but I wish I'd spoken out a little more about it. It's difficult when you're in cabinet and you're bound by cabinet solidarity, and what you do is express your viewpoint in the privacy of the cabinet, and I certainly did quite strongly. Everyone knew where I stood, because you and I had worked on a very successful campaign to get the plebiscite on it, and we won that plebiscite. So I was sad to see Sunday shopping come in, not because a lot of people assumed as a Baptist minister I was against Sunday shopping for religious reasons. That wasn't really it. I was against it because we need a common family day, as common as possible, where we can spend time on the important things in life. And Sunday was a day where the majority of people had off, and we should try and safeguard it rather than opening it up. And so I think that was a mistake that the MacDonald government did. We actually got polling back that showed that people were upset with that change, and so it was a bad move, and it wasn't a move that helped out politically. Part of the problem was that we were the only party that were against Sunday shopping. The Liberals wanted Sunday shopping, and the New Democratic Party were not taking a stand on it, but quietly wanted it because of the pressure from Halifax, where most of their members had seats.
Well, on the internet, Miss Marie MacDonald will in the legislature on Wednesday, November the 1st, 2006. These were her comments. I believe she's health minister now.
She's health minister now, yeah.
Okay. Also, we have to acknowledge that there were people who probably don't care at all one way or another. Well, I don't agree. It was a big thing, Sunday shopping in Nova Scotia. And then she goes on to say, but the thing that struck me most of all, those different points of view, was that the leader of the Liberal Party said, I currently concur with his remarks. The absolute confusion and the genuine concern that the people all across the spectrum in terms and their viewpoints on this issue felt when the government made the incredible flip-flop on the very important issue and essentially hid behind Mr. Justice Rich's decision, and I think added to the confusion to the public. I would willfully add it because that would be an impunging move, which isn't permitted here, Mr. Speaker, but certainly their positive added to the confusion and the predominant idea that somehow the courts had struck down Sunday shopping in our province. This simply didn't occur. Sunday shopping wasn't struck down.
No, she's right on that. What happened was that Michael Baker, who was the Justice Minister at the time in charge of the legislation, brought in regulations to outlaw Sunday shopping. In Nova Scotia, you can do regulations by cabinet decree. You don't need to go to the legislature. And so he did that because he knew that the other two parties wouldn't support legislation. We were in a minority government, and so it was easier to do regulation. When the Justice came out with his decision, what he said in effect And this is where she's right, because Michael tried to fudge it a bit. But what he said really is you can't do that by regulation, but you could do it by legislation. And so we needed to go back to the House. The problem was that there was no support in the legislature for it. And so I'm agreeing with Maureen, but also I want to challenge Maureen, if she's listening to this tape, because they have a majority government now, and they could very easily bring in legislation with a majority government, and they could pass it. They don't need the help or concurrence of the other two parties.
In other words, every retail worker in Nova Scotia was robbed of a family day from all parties.
All parties participated because the other two parties wouldn't support legislation, and the Tory party had tried to do regulation, which was not as good a way, and the justice said you can't do it by regulation, but you can do it by legislation. And John Buchanan, who I know isn't popular in a lot of circles, but on this issue was a supporter, he phoned me up and he said, "Why don't you do legislation, Mark?" And I said, because we're in a minority government and we can't get the support of the other parties. We used to have the support of the NDP when John Holme was the House leader, but that changed. John was very, very strong on this issue because he felt that retail workers were amongst the lowest paid workers in the province, had the least rights, had no union to support them, and that they deserved protection. But once John retired, the NDP on this issue, they weren't for it and they weren't against it, but because they weren't for it, they weren't going to support you in the legislature. But now with a majority government, Maureen, who's a high-ranking minister, I would hope that she would reread her comments from 2006, and I would publicly praise her in the paper if they move forward on this, because it was a bad move that the government did, and it was occasioned by that by the judge's ruling. But the judge's ruling was very clear, if you read it, as I know you did and I did, that it was, you can't do it by regulation, you have to use legislation. So legislatively speaking, the province could bring in legislation to ban Sunday shopping. Not for religious reasons, they can't do it for religious reasons, but they could do it for other reasons, and that would hold up in a court of law.
My question to you is, why are retail workers being held hostage? Because, I mean, religion is being used against us, so we can't be home with our families, yet you never hear someone look at a postal worker, for example, and say, "I don't know why you're not delivering mail on Sundays because it's a religious day."
Well, and why don't MLAs work on Sundays, or school teachers work on Sundays? I used to say, and I think I said to you, if the government was trying to make teachers work on Sundays, or change the law so teachers had to work on Sundays, there'd be an uprising across the province.
Oh, there would be hell to pay.
But retail workers, you know, you're considered a group that really aren't very strong.
Did you have many complaints from retail workers about being forced to work on Sundays?
I did. Oh, personally, I did. And when I went into the stores, I didn't go on Sunday, but I go into the stores, and they were quite disappointed. They knew my personal position, but they were upset because they didn't have much recourse. Now, we did bring in a labor law, which I brought in, hoping to protect people at least on religious reasons, but there were so many ways employers could skirt around them.